90 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Hi, I'm Matea Roach, and I have a new show on CBC. It's called Bookends. Every week, authors from Canada and around the world will join me to discuss their latest books. We'll have best-selling authors and rising stars. Our conversations will be smart and surprising, because when the book ends, the conversation begins.
Bookends with Matea Roach, Sunday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland, 3 Pacific, and on demand on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the...
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 8 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. A man sent to prison 50 years ago for the murder of a Winnipegger has been exonerated. Clarence Woodhouse was acquitted of the charge today. The CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck was in court.
Woodhouse was in court with family this morning to hear a judge confirm what he's always known. He's innocent. Woodhouse was one of 3 First Nations men convicted of murdering Ting Fong Chan in 1974. The chef and father of 2 was beaten and stabbed to death downtown a year earlier. Woodhouse was sentenced to life in prison and spent 12 years behind bars before getting parole, but he always said he didn't do it. The 2 other men convicted of murdering Chan were acquitted in 2023. Woodhouse was granted bail later that year. Woodhouse, now 72, sat quietly alongside his lawyers today as Court of King's Bench Chief Justice Glenn Joyal apologized for what he called a miscarriage of justice in a case infected by systemic racism. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meanwhile, Premier Wab Kinew says he hopes to sit down with Woodhouse in the very near future. He says it's a sad situation and agrees with the judge who said there was a miscarriage of justice.
I would love to meet him. One of the things, honestly, just on a personal level, is that we speak the same language. And I just want to be able to just talk to a fellow Manitoban who, not exactly, but maybe a similar background to mine, and just compare notes. And again, just offer the same sense of sorry, just to apologize directly.
Kinew says the province is working on some form of redress for Woodhouse. He says there's no way the province can make up for the years robbed from him, but he hopes to make some kind of amends. A City of Winnipeg engineer says construction throughout the city will be wrapping up soon. Michelle Stainton says between 40 to 50% of the major road projects are already done. The multi-year St. Vital Bridge work will be done by the end of this month. But Stainton says a couple major projects will continue while the snow flies.
Abinodi-Mekina is a 2-year project, so that one will still look like it'll be open to traffic for the winter, but it may still look, have some locations that would have a couple of barricades. And some pieces of Inkster the whole project of Inkster is a 2-year project.
Stainton says this past construction season was one of the busiest ever. In international news, Lebanese officials say 2 weeks of Israeli strikes have killed nearly 2,000 people, including hundreds of women and children. What you're hearing is the sound of a plane as evacuees from many nations board and leave Beirut en masse. There are many Lebanese nationals, meanwhile, who are increasingly finding they have nowhere to go. Israel is expanding evacuation orders to more than 20 towns and villages in the country's south. The potentially widening Israeli ground incursion comes as the IDF says it hit 200 Hezbollah targets today. Israeli military says those targets included what it calls Hezbollah intelligence headquarters in Beirut. The IDF says it also killed 15 Hezbollah members in an overnight strike. The new head of NATO is in Ukraine.
It was important to me that I come to Ukraine at the start of my mandate to make crystal clear to you, to the people of Ukraine, and to everyone watching, that NATO stands with Ukraine.
This is Mark Rutte's first official trip since taking over as Secretary General earlier this week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told Rutte he wants NATO to respond to Russian missile strikes the same way Israel's allies helped repel Iran's attack a few days ago. Both the United States and Britain say that they shot down several Iranian missiles fired into Israel. A child in Ontario has died from rabies. It happened in the region north of Sudbury. The age of the child or other details have not been released at this time. The local medical officer of health says a bat got into the room where the child was sleeping. But parents didn't see any signs of a bite or scratches and did not seek a rabies vaccine. There have been 26 cases of rabies in humans in Canada since records began 100 years ago. All of those cases were fatal. And a prominent downtown monument is about to get a new home. The statue in front of the former Bank of Montreal building is being moved to make way for the reopening of Portage in Maine. The CBC's Cameron McLean has your details.
The monument features the figure of a Canadian First World War soldier. Unveiled in 1923, it honors the 231 Bank of Montreal employees who died fighting in the war. The statue was modeled after Captain Win Bagnall, a member of the bank's Winnipeg staff. The Manitoba Métis Federation acquired the statue when it bought the former BMO building on the southeast corner of Portage in Maine. The city plans to remove the barricades and reopen the intersection to pedestrians by July 1st next year. The monument must be moved in order for that work to happen. This morning, the property committee voted to accept the statue as a gift. It will be relocated to the Field of Honor in Brookside Cemetery. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/Manitoba. Looking at the forecast, we have a high of 12 today and windy in Winnipeg with a mix of sun and clouds. In Brandon, mainly sunny and windy, a high of 12. Dauphin, windy and sunny, a high of 10. Flin Flon, mainly cloudy, a high of 7. Thompson, flurries or rain, a high of +5. And in Churchill, a chance of flurries, windy, with a high of +2. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk. Good afternoon. Well, coming up this hour on the show, we are talking politics. It's been a year since Manitobans voted in the NDP. So we're opening up the phone lines after 12:30 to hear how you feel about the job they've been doing so far. Also up first here on the show, we're going to hear from a member of Manitoba's PC opposition who's going to be joining us to give their take on the NDP's first year in power. Also this half hour on the show, keeping everything organized can be tough for organizations whose board members are all volunteers, but a pair of software designers in Steinbach have a new program that might help people figure that out. That's all coming up right here on Radio Noon. Stay tuned. Well, a year ago today, Wab Kinew and the NDP took power, and today he and his party continue to enjoy what political watchers describe as a honeymoon. A September Probe Research poll shows support for the party at its highest ever, 56%. And this morning, the Premier spoke to reporters about his 1 year in power.
Tons more work to do, but what we've done so far, we've staffed up our healthcare system. 873 more people working on the front lines today. We've cut the provincial gas tax to make your life more affordable and to bring inflation down in this province. And we're feeding hungry kids. I think everybody in Manitoba can be proud of that. But what I'm most excited about is the prospect of what we can do from here on in. To build a province that leads Canada in creating opportunity for people. 1 year ago today, Manitobans showed the rest of Canada that our province is a leader. And now we've been given the awesome task of being able to ensure that we're going to be an economic leader, a health system leader, a leader when it comes to educational attainment, and yes, a leader on listening to the voices of survivors and ensuring that this country lives up to the phrase that every child matters.
That's Premier Wab Kinew speaking at a press conference earlier today. So how does the official opposition see this past year? Lauren Stone is the Progressive Conservative MLA for Midland. She's also the finance critic. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Corey, and thanks for having me here. And it's also been a year since I was elected, as I was elected as a new MLA last October as well. And what I've certainly seen over the past year is the challenges for Manitobans are continuing to grow. Mm-hmm. Cost of living still continues to be the number one concern that Manitobans are facing. We do have the fuel tax that we're expecting to come back on January 1st, where Manitobans are certainly going to see pump shock as they go to the gas stations. And Manitoba is leading in food inflation. So, certainly a lot of challenges that Manitoba continue to face, and we haven't seen a lot of affordability measures come from the NDP government, considering this is the number one issue that Manitobans are feeling right now. We've seen an increase in taxes, increase in property taxes and income taxes. All these impact the recruitment of skilled workers that Manitobans need, like doctors, like nurses, like engineers. So, at the same time, we have hallway education. The NDP has cut 9 schools and hundreds of daycare spaces. I'm a mom of 2 young kids. I have a son in daycare. He's 3 years old and have been heavily reliant on daycare as a young mom. And I know that there's hundreds of parents, thousands of parents across this province that are looking to those daycare spaces and to those schools for their growing children. So, there's certainly a lot of challenges and problems that are facing Manitoba. We just saw the NDP saddle Manitobans with $2 billion in deficit, over $2 billion in debt servicing costs, which is essentially interest rates. So, these are complex challenges that Manitobans are facing. And we have yet to see a plan from the NDP government into what looks ahead and how they're going to help with those issues and challenges for Manitobans.
Thanks for that. I want to dive into a couple of those issues you mentioned. Let's stick in the finance realm here, since you're the finance critic. Let's go back to the gas tax. I know that's something we heard Wab Kinew touting earlier today. Something you mentioned that there might be some price shock coming from that. So there's that 14 cents gas tax. It what has been extended to the end of the year. So what is your take on the gas tax holiday itself? What do you want the province to do come January? Do you think it should be extended, that gas tax holiday?
Manitobans need long-term affordability measures to deal with the cost of living. And what the NDP is doing is they're stringing Manitobans 3 months at a time. I know for me, when I look at my budget, I look long-term with where I'm going to be spending my dollars and for my family. And 3 months at a time is not how Manitobans need to manage their money. So we need to see some long-term affordability commitments, not something every 3 months.
I know also you mentioned the deficit as well, the $2 billion deficit. The NDP does, point its finger to a certain degree at the previous PC government as well for leading to this $2 billion deficit. So how much of the blame do you think the previous PC government should take for that?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. To be clear, the NDP has taken 7 years of credible fiscal performance under the former PC government, and in the matter of months, completely wrecked it. The PCs were on a path to balance. S&P Global rating agencies said that we were on a path to balance. So this was incredibly possible and doable. If the PCs could do it, why can't the NDP? These are some of the things that I look forward to getting into in public accounts and estimates to find out where that overspending occurred since the last election.
I'm sure also the NDP would probably say that there was a number of things. I know they've said in the past that there was things that didn't necessarily make it into the budget itself. But I guess where we are now is the fact that there's a deficit. And I'm sure there is some probably shared blame on both sides. But right now, when we look ahead, how would you like to see the NDP balance this coming budget?
It's about balancing priorities. Manitobans need to have their taxes kept low because, as I mentioned, cost of living is the number one issue impacting Manitobans. And we also need to spend in key areas that are important to Manitobans, like healthcare, like crime and safety. So it is a balancing act. It's about priorities. The PCs were able to keep taxes low, increase spending in key areas while also returning to a balanced budget. If the PCs were able to do it, then the NDP should be able to do it too.
Let's talk a little bit about healthcare as well here. So, one of the NDP's biggest promises was to fix our healthcare system. How successful do you think Wabkanu's government has been there?
We've seen them cancel surgeries and surgical options for Manitobans. That was quite a successful program that the former PC government had implemented. And, we're hearing from healthcare workers across the province that they aren't feeling heard despite the NDP pledging to listen. The NDP government really needs to plan to mitigate impact on patients as the potential for, strikes occurring in the future and as that looms. And ER wait times are up, both in the city and we're seeing it in rural Manitoba as well. And there really needs to be an emphasis on recruitment, not just within the city of Winnipeg, but in rural areas as well.
I know one of the things that NDP have been touting is that they're making their way towards that 1,000 staff goal, a hiring goal that they're at. I think their last count, they said 873. So what do you make of the progress that the NDP say they made so far?
I think this is healthcare recruitment is a challenge across the entire country, and we're competing for healthcare workers, not just within communities in Manitoba, but across the entire country as well. And this goes back to ensuring that Manitobans have a safe place to live in communities, that people actually want to come and live in Manitoba and live in our communities, and also ensuring that our province remains affordable. The tax changes that we saw, the increase in property taxes, changes to the basic personal exemption, those are all deterring factors to recruit skilled professions like doctors here in Manitoba.
Is there anything else you think that the government could do to attract more doctors or healthcare workers in general?
We need to keep the economy growing. We need to ensure that our communities are safe and that taxes are low and that Manitoban continues to be an affordable province to live in. And, we see that in previous NDP governments, investment in the province stalled and flooded to provinces like Saskatchewan and Alberta. So we need to ensure that investment dollars stay in Manitoba and the jobs come with that.
Is there anything, that you think the NDP government has done well in this first year?
There have been some good policy decisions as it relates to, increasing tax credits for individuals looking to have children. That was a PC initiative or PC promise that took place in the last election. So, I was certainly pleased to see that.
And as you look towards the next year, what are going to be the main policies and promises you'll be keeping your eye on when it comes to, I know you're the finance critic, but even in general as a party, as the NDP continue to at least try to fulfill their promises?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned, cost of living and affordability, long-term affordability for Manitobans is absolutely critical, ensuring that taxes do remain low. Manitobans need to keep as many dollars in their pocket as possible. Cost of living is a significant challenge and is growing. So that's certainly something that we'll be looking towards, is that long-term planning for Manitobans and their pocketbooks. And then also on crime and safety and ensuring that our communities, not just in Winnipeg, but across the entire province, remain safe.
I know they've been touting the loss prevention program as a crime and safety initiative. What else do you think the NDP government can do in terms of crime and safety?
We've seen that the NDP is propping up Trudeau's bail policies, and so a lot of the challenges are as a result of Trudeau's catch and release policies, and we've seen the NDP prop that up. So we'd certainly like to see the NDP have a stronger voice around the table of other premiers and to the Trudeau government to ensure that violent criminals are kept behind bars.
As you mentioned earlier in our interview, it's also been a year since you were elected. So I just want to take a couple moments to kind of reflect on your own party. I know this also means that, the PC's lost power a year ago. So what's been happening within the Progressive Conservative Party to process that loss and move forward?
You know what? Yeah, Corey, it's an exciting time for our party. You know, we're heading into a leadership race at the end of April. So this is an exciting time. We have leadership candidates out across the whole province that are selling memberships, re-engaging with Manitobans, from the north to the south, the east to the west, across the city of Winnipeg. So it's going to be an exciting time for our party. It's a time of renewal and rebuilding trust with Manitobans. And I look forward to see how the next few months unfolds with this leadership race.
And as you start kind of moving towards that and thinking about who the next leader will be, what qualities, do you think the next leader of the Progressive Conservative Party needs to have to, successfully be the most effective opposition party and potentially even future government?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Obviously, ensuring that they support the values of the PC party as a whole. And, like I said, have ensure that they're reaching out to Manitobans from all areas of the province. And I think that's one of the really exciting things with the new rule changes that our party has created. So I'm certainly excited to see a leader that comes and listens to Manitobans from all walks of life. I'd love to see an individual that has strong financial and business background. I mean, the government is the largest corporation that we have in the province of Manitoba. And so I think that's certainly a really critical skill set to have to lead this province and to be premier in the next election.
Lauren, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Corey, for the time. Have a great day.
You too. Lauren Stone is the Progressive Conservative finance critic and MLA for Midland.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
12:21 right now. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk, and I think it's fair to say it officially feels like fall out there. Here in Winnipeg, we are heading for a high today of 12 degrees, mix of sun and cloud, bit breezy wind, west 20 gusting to 40. Let's take a look at your current temperatures across the province here this afternoon. Brandon, right now, mainly sunny, looking at 8 degrees. Carberry, 8 degrees as well right now. Churchill at the airport, mostly cloudy. You're sitting at 2 degrees. If you're wondering what our hotspot is today, it's Emerson, sitting at 11 right now, whereas our cold spot is to Dooley Lake at 1, experiencing some light rain right now. Gimli at the harbor, 8 degrees for you right now. Melita, 10 degrees right now. Norway House, 4 degrees. The Pas at the airport, 3 degrees. Thompson at the airport, some light snow shower, and that is a thing, according to the Environment Canada website. Some light snow shower right now. You're sitting at 2 degrees. Victoria Beach, 8. And here in Winnipeg at the Forks, 8 degrees. Stay tuned because we are going to keep this political conversation going. We're going to be opening up our phone lines after 12:30 to ask how you feel about the NDP government after a year in power. That's what's coming up right here on Radio Noon. Stay tuned. Well, have you ever volunteered on a board and found it a challenge to keep everyone on the same page? Well, our next guests might have a solution. Scott Dillabo and Kevin Brown are co-owners of a new software program called Oh My Board, and they're based in Steinbach. Hello.
Hi. Oh. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Yeah, well, Scott, I want to start with you. I know you've actually been on boards before, so this comes from real world experience. So what was that experience like for you being on boards?
Found the transition to join the board was in most cases it was a little difficult. It was didn't really know what I was getting into. There wasn't a lot of information. There wasn't a lot of knowledge transfer from anybody that was in the position before. being on the boards themselves, they were pretty good. Once we got everything figured out and we were able to get all the administrative stuff out of the way and how we're going to operate and know what our different duties were, the boards worked well. But it was mostly the startup and the ramp up for myself that I found was the difficult part. And then also at the end, trying to do that transfer of knowledge to the next group too was difficult.
So now this app, Oh My Board, how do you hope it'll help make life on a board easier?
Well, it kind of grew out of that those kind of issues that I was seeing when I would join and leave boards. The app, it's a web-based solution for volunteer board management. So basically, the intent is to make the administration, to simplify that administration part and the knowledge transfer, so that the board members can basically focus on the board, the mandate, the board objectives, rather than getting set up and going right away.
I know many boards are also staffed by volunteers, right? So how does this help volunteers who maybe don't actually have much time for organizing?
Well, that's the point here, right? We want to centralize this so that it's all set up. Like there will be time, the initial point when the board joins Oh My Board, there will be a setup and administration time needed there. But once that's done, as you move through board transitions to new people that are, parents and have full-time jobs, they won't have to worry about setting all this stuff up. It's all centralized, and they'll find the information that they need in one spot, and that can be passed on as boards go.
And Kevin, I know you're on board. You're the technical guy, kind of making this, putting it all together. Tell me how the program work. What do they see, and what's that experience like?
As soon as you sign up, you're taken to a page where you can search for an existing board, or you can create a new board. So if you're setting up your board for the first time, you simply create the board. Pretty simple, straightforward. We're trying to make this as simple as possible, understanding that most people that we're targeting are not really all in IT, and we want to make it as simple and streamlined as possible.
Who came up with the name Oh My Board? When I read it for the first time, I'm like, this is pretty funny.
Scott came up with that. We were brainstorming ideas. That was Scott's brilliant idea. Yeah.
Thought it'd be a real nice way to shorten it, OMB, like you do whenever you're writing, texting. OMB. Where we see this going, we're hoping that, we really want to help these small volunteer boards out there that have a lot of turnover and frustrations when you're joining, that kind of stuff. That's where we're targeting. We really want to help them out and make the volunteer board member change their experience. So make it a lot better of an experience. Another place that we want to go in the future is we'd like to have a forum there that users could interact with other users, across the country. If you have an issue that you're facing on your board, we'd like to have a forum where you could pose a question and see if there's someone out there that's faced it and can help you do that. So we're really looking to try and build a nice volunteer community out there that can help each other. Sports organizations, churches, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks, fellas, and all the best as you get this off the ground.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Scott Dillabo and Kevin Brown are co-owners of a new software program called Oh My Board. And for information about the subscription-based app, you can go to the website, www.ohmyboard.com.
You're standing straight, a drink in your hand, trying to defend a name, famous sense that you're somewhat in control. You're wearing a mask, hiding behind fake smiles and forced laughs. What are you trying to find? I don't even know who I can trust to be safe. Who's my friend and who's fake? Trying to get closer for their own sake. I don't even know when I am playing myself. I want a piece of the cake. I've gotta be in become a pale copy of them. White Nikes like everyone else can afford to buy real Chanel. You gave me a mess, bought me a drink, showed me a smile to stand in line. What am I trying to find? I don't even know who I can trust to be safe.
That's Sarah Danielle with Easy. Well, here on Radio Noon, stay tuned because we are going to be opening up the phone lines in just a couple minutes here to talk about how you feel about the NDP government 1 year in. We're going to be joined by political studies professor Chris Adams, who's going to be giving his opinion, his thoughts on where things are at and analysis, and we're going to be taking your calls. So here's the number, 204-780 780, I have it here, 0893. That's 204-780-0893. We'll be opening those phone lines right now. Give us a call. I'm looking forward to hearing you here on Radio Noon. We're going to let Sarah Danielle take us out.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 8 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. A man sent to prison 50 years ago for the murder of a Winnipegger has been exonerated. Clarence Woodhouse was acquitted of the charge today. Woodhouse was one of 3 First Nations men convicted of killing Ting Fong Chan in 1974. Woodhouse spent 12 years behind bars before getting parole. He's always said he didn't do it, and it's good to be free now.
Yeah, it's been nice to be free, eh? After all these years. Eh? The probably just relax. He was my son there. Yeah, my grandchildren too.
Court of King's Bench Chief Justice Glenn Joyal apologized to the 72-year-old Woodhouse for what he called a miscarriage of justice in a case infected by systemic racism. Premier Wab Kinew says he'd like to meet and speak with Woodhouse. He says the provincial government will offer Woodhouse some form of redress, but will never be able to give back the years he lost incarcerated. Some good news for people stuck in traffic because of road work. The construction season is wrapping up soon. Michelle Stainton is a project management engineer with the City of Winnipeg, and she says if you think it's been a busier Winnipeg construction season than usual, you're right.
We're around 40 to 50% fully complete at this point, but that means individual locations are fully complete and open. We're having more and more projects open up every day.
Stainton says the multi-year St. Vital Bridge project is expected to be complete by the end of this month. And she says work on Abinogi-Mekina and at Inkster will continue through the winter as they are both 2-year projects. And finally, taking a look at American politics, it appears Melania Trump doesn't always agree with her husband's policies.
Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom.
That's an ad Melania Trump has posted online for her new memoir. The Guardian newspaper has obtained a copy of the book, which includes a passage where she fiercely defends a woman's right to an abortion. This is not her husband's position. The memoir comes out next week, 1 month before the election, the American election, which is on November 5th. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Matt.
I'm sure we'll all closely be watching.
Oh, yes, most certainly. Thank you.
Back soon.
Thank you. That is Matt Humphrey at our CBC News Desk. I'm Corey Funk. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. It's got a little bit warmer outside, but still kind of fallish, isn't it there, Riley?
I've had more than a couple of people in the newsroom today remark about, oh gosh, how cold it was this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wait till tomorrow morning.
I was still the fool that wore socks and sandals on my bike ride in today. I just don't know why, and I deeply regretted it.
Wait till tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Wait till tomorrow morning.
Okay.
We'll get into that.
So thick socks and sandals tomorrow.
Tomorrow, probably thicker socks. Yeah. Right now, temperatures 9 degrees in both Winnipeg and Steinbach, Gimli, Victoria Beach, both at 8 this hour. Portage and Brandon also both at 8. 2s and 1s through much of northern Manitoba. We're still seeing the residual and some very gusty winds from that area of low pressure that's kind of stalled out over Hudson Bay, impacting parts of Nunavut and the far northern part of the province with some light snow and some very gusty northwest winds still flowing down into southern Manitoba. Expect that to continue as well as we get through the rest of today. We get a bit of a break from the wind, which I'll get into in a moment here. The rest of today, mainly sunny for southern Manitoba, a bit of thin high-level clouds. So yeah, a general mix of sun and cloud across much of southern Manitoba. The north, particularly through the later afternoon, getting a little bit more in the way of sunny breaks, but still, especially along the Hudson Bay coast, very windy conditions and the risk of maybe even some light snow in far, far northern parts of the province. Friday, mainly sunny skies. We get a bit of a break tomorrow from the wind, so a much brighter, much drier, much more comfortable day. And then our next area of low pressure moves in as we get into Saturday. Cloud starts to build in as we get through the morning hours, and a few light showers as we get through the later afternoon in particular. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. Winds today, west, northwesterly, gusting up to 40 through much of the province. Could see some gusts 50, 60 or higher along the Hudson Bay coast, particularly Churchill, Shamattawa, looking at some of those stronger winds. Friday, winds stay pretty calm through the day, but then they pick up as we get into the evening hours. Again, southerly and southeasterly winds this time. 20, 30, 40, gusting 60 or higher as we get through the overnight period Friday into Saturday. Could even see some gusts up to 70 as we get into Saturday. So weekend's looking a bit windy again. 12 degrees is what I have for a high in Winnipeg today. 13 in Brandon. Thompson and Gillam both looking at highs of 4 today. 17s for Friday and Saturday. 15, still a bit breezy on Sunday. And then, Corey, we're looking at 18s for Monday and Tuesday again. So back up above seasonal as we get into next week. And it looks like we enter a bit of a drier pattern as we get into next week as well.
Yeah, and you know what? I can take the I can take the cold weather, but it's the wind that gets me.
It's the wind. I know it's been a very windy week, and the weekend in particular is going to be very windy again.
I'm still reeling from when the wind knocked over a pizza box at my 2-year-old's birthday party.
Oh no!
Yeah, you can imagine what
with
that
the
was
pizza.
Like. Yeah, and I think I was actually surprisingly the only one that cried. So. Thank you very much,
It's
Riley.
unfortunate. You're welcome.
That is CBC's Riley Lachuk. Well, time now is 12:36 here on Radio Noon, and it is time for our call-in conversation. It's been 1 year since Manitobans elected Wab Kinew as Premier of Manitoba, and today we want to hear what you think about the job the NDP government has been doing so far. Some polls continue to suggest Kinew's government is popular. Probe Research poll puts his government at 58% approval rating, the highest actually. This is a September poll, of course, that it's ever seen. So we want to know what you think. What new policies do you like so far? Which ones don't you like? How have they impacted your life so far? Give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. You can also text us if you'd rather not talk on air. 204-588-7355. That's 204-588-7355. Our guest today is Christopher Adams, an adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba and author of Politics in Manitoba. And I know we've already got one caller on the line, and I'm looking forward to getting to you. But first, I want to go to you here, Chris. Hello.
Hi, Corey. Nice to be with you.
So Kinew has fulfilled some election promises like temporarily cutting the gas tax, but not so much on some other big issues like healthcare wait times, for example. So what do you think are some of the most consequential things the NDP have done this past year?
Well, I would say, and I'm not partisan here, Corey, but I would say that they've tried to fulfill most of their election promises. They had a lot of promises last August and September when they were running for office. And, one of them, as you know, is the gasoline tax, the holiday that was brought forward. Also, the spring budget was, about 6 months ago, the spring budget also had quite a lot of money in it for hiring 100 healthcare workers. And I do know they've had some progress, but I mean, it hasn't been right away. I would say that generally speaking, they've been addressing most of the promises that they made. Now, one of the issues might be as you fulfill all those promises, the question is can you balance the budget as you had forecasted during the election that you would do it over a certain amount of time, and that still is a question mark. But I would say generally speaking, they've been fulfilling their election promises.
Thanks for that there, Chris. So we've actually got Dave on the line here. Hi there, Dave.
Hello.
So, Dave, what do you think about the job the NDP have been doing so far?
Well, I remember politicians back to kind of Brian Mulroney days, and he's my favorite. I like hearing him speak. He's intelligent. I believe he's telling the truth. And some of the stuff that I see, they got most of the healthcare workers that they hoped to get hired back. They were bringing some out of retirement, so you got to be doing something right to pull people back into a system that they left out of disgust.
Mm-hmm.
And he apologized on the radio the other day for a mistake that he made.
And
That's big.
Which mistake was that? Just to remind listeners.
That one guy that left their cabinet.
Oh,
because he was a lawyer kind of thing.
Right. Oh, apologizing to defense lawyers. That's right.
Yeah, it was a really short apology, but it made sense and it wasn't a lie. So it was just like, good for you, dude.
So overall, you are probably of the people that would give them a thumbs up so far in the last year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like them a lot. And they seem to be trying to do what they promised in a tough time. So.
Thanks for that, Dave.
Thank you.
That is Dave, who just joined us. And we want you to hear your opinions too. Be like Dave. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. How do you feel about the job the NDP have done this year? Are there some policies you like, you don't like? What do you want to see from them in the coming year? You can give us a call. Our director, Dylan, is standing by. So I know, Chris, one thing you mentioned is this idea of balancing the budget, right? Whether they can pull it off as they kind of work their way through these rather expensive promises like fixing healthcare. If they don't balance the budget, like historically, how much does that move the needle in terms of public opinion?
Well, that's, one thing, Corey, is politicians always are talking about a forecasted balanced budget down the road, and then you get down the road, and often it's not the case that you're able to balance it. So I would say that Manitobans are more interested in things that affect them directly, and provincial debt or high deficits, you can't really feel the direct hit of it, except, indirectly as it affects, your tax rates and things like that. But, Dave raised an interesting point that, he says he admires Brian Mulroney, who was landslide victory in 84 and 88. And Brian Mulroney was what we call kind of more on the kind of a red Tory almost. He was part of a neoconservative movement, but also he did argue to support senior citizens, social support programs, and things like that, while he did other things that were more conservative. But Brian Mulroney is a type of conservative leader quite different than the current conservative leaders that we see in this country.
I guess you could see Brian Mulroney as like you said, a red Tory. And in a lot of ways, I think because of also the nature of politics here in Manitoba, the NDP here also tend to have some policies or positions that might not be necessarily your stereotypical left of center things, like the gas tax, for example. Do you see that sort of kind of connection? Not necessarily like bipartisan connection, but is that some kind of essential appeal there?
Well, I would say the NDP has been successful in Manitoba elections over the past 20 years when they knew how to appeal to the suburban middle-class voters. Gary Doer was good at that. Selinger did it in his first election. And then Wab Kinew. And so successful is that type of an appeal, such as the gasoline tax cut, that we see the NDP in Saskatchewan, who are in an election right now next door, that they are using many of the promises that Wab Kinew did last summer and fall. They're adopting it for their campaign right now.
We still want to hear from you. What do you think about the NDP's job they've been doing so far? 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. So let's talk about that gasoline tax. I know, they've extended it to the end of the year, but if they decide not to keep that tax holiday going, bring the tax back in January, what do you think the political consequences of that might be for the party?
Yeah, it's easier to do a tax cut than to introduce a tax. So there will be, there will be friction, when it comes back in. But in Canute's defense, when he ran for election with that as a major part of his platform, he did say that it would be in place until inflation came back down. So he wouldn't be breaking his promise if he brought that tax back. But he did get flack on his among environmentalists and those on the left wing when he brought that forward, because there's a sense that this is not really something to address climate change. And so environmentalists were quite concerned about when it was introduced and are still, saying that this is not something that should continue. We should be having higher taxes for high gasoline consumption, not lower taxes.
We've got Erica on the line here. Hello there, Erica. Hi. Hi. What's your thoughts on the NDP's job so far?
Yeah, I was just picking up on what you folks were just talking about how the NDP tends to be really successful when there's, sort of more center or right appealing policies. And that is certainly something I've noticed with this government. I think there's a lot of, really important social programs happening. Like, I know that there's a lot of work in harm reduction happening. There's a lot of work creating, the safer consumption site and all sorts of good projects. But it has been really hard as somebody whose politics swing pretty far left to see things like, the gas tax that doesn't improve the quality of life for people who don't have cars. And also, the increased funding for policing of retail theft in a time where inflation and cost of living concerns are squeezing more and more people into manufactured poverty. It seems like a very conservative style approach to police people who are, in essence, struggling to survive. Like, if we're feeling a pinch in the middle class, we got to think about the people who already were struggling.
So, a year in there, Erica, do you, do you think more or less of the NDP than you did, when, I don't know if you voted for them or not, but then
I will out myself. I super did vote for the NDP because I think it also, there was a lot of harm being caused by some of the conservative policies that were happening, specifically to people who lived in manufactured poverty and, I think it was really hard to see people voting and campaigning on searching landfills. So I think there's a lot of really great stuff happening with this government, and I'm still happy I voted NDP. And I just want to know who it is that I can vote for that will have leftist policies that don't punish people for being poor.
Erica, thanks for that perspective. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks. Take care.
Chris, I know we have another person on the line here. I want to get to them shortly here, but I'm wondering how rare it is to see approval ratings like 58%. It's a growing approval rating as a year goes on from a party almost a year in, like the NDP. What do you think? What do you make of that 58?
In the 30 years I've studied Manitoba politics, I haven't seen numbers like this on a consistent level as so high. A full year after. And seems like almost yesterday they were elected, and being with Janet Stewart on the election desk seemed like a month ago. But I would say that, Wab Kinew, it's not just election promises. He's had a certain demeanor as a leader that has, in many ways, sort of charmed Manitobans. That picture that went all around virally, changing the tire. Yeah, the changing the tire. And I've been at major dinners where he's spoken. There was tragedies in certain communities of people murdered, and he's making a moment of silence at the Chinese New Year dinner that I was at, and I saw that. He just has a demeanor that yes, on Friday watching the bombers, and it was on Orange Shirt Day, and as people in their orange shirts were coming out of the gates, onto the playing field. There he was in the middle of it with a smile on his face and joining the other people on sort of the average folks running onto the field with their orange shirts. So he has a way to charm people of all different walks of life in Manitoba, and that's resonating in the polls these days.
And picking up a little bit on Erica's perspective there, how unique is the NDP here in Manitoba compared to NDP parties provincially elsewhere in the country and federally? Like, do they have a little bit more of a rightward tinge just because the nature of the fact their only real competition is progressive conservatives?
Yes, well, the NDP is more of a centrist party, maybe center left at times. I would say that it's not as left as the British Columbia NDP, but you have to look at each province as sort of a distinct world unto itself, and there are different forces that go behind different political parties. So the NDP has more of a strong union push behind it, and more of a working class push, whereas in Manitoba, it's been a different mixture of people, and including the North. The North is a very important part of the NDP. But, we've had fairly wily NDP leaders in Manitoba who've known, how to appeal to different folks, and the swing voters are critical. In the last election last fall, it was really the Liberal voters that they brought under their wing. You might recall Lloyd Axworthy spoke about endorsing Canoe in the fall, and
A former
and the
Liberal
Liberals
cabinet minister, yeah.
yeah, and the Liberals collapsed to one seat in the Assembly. So Canoe, if he had moved more to the left, he wouldn't have attracted over those urban Liberal Party voters.
We've got Adam on the line here. Hi there, Adam.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What do you make of the job the NDP have done so far?
So far so good. I think from where we came from, you kind of couldn't do worse. Looking at Steffen's policies, we won't search the landfill. That's where I draw the line. I think that really was awful for a lot of people to watch happen. OB-cons, the rights of the parents, to anti-LGBTQS stuff, that was a little too much for a lot of people to take. So, yeah, the overall feeling of the NDP's priorities, right on. I'm behind it. What I'm a little bit concerned about is that healthcare. Yeah, we need improvements in healthcare. We need more doctors. We need more nurses. We need more of all of the support staff and facilities and all of the promises that they've gone in that direction. Awesome. Wonderful. Behind it all the way. A little bit concerned on where the money comes from. So the gas tax, didn't see the relief in the gas tax coming. And I wonder, the policy for Center, going to get the name wrong, but the Center for Canadian Policy Alternatives, they came out recently and said the gas tax isn't helping, some of the people who need the most support in society. And it's that kind of stuff. I always am concerned with the NDP. Where does the money come from? And I think eventually, if you can't keep your promises because there's just not enough cash, then this year, everybody's loving the NDP. They're up in the polls, most popular premier going, wonderful, great. But that's going to drop off real quick if promises don't get kept because there's not enough money to keep them.
I'm curious even for you, Adam. I know we were talking about this earlier in terms of, if, they kind of stay on course with these promises, but you find out in a year or two that, the deficit is way out of control. Is that a deal breaker for you?
Well, you can't spend forever without making the money. So what happens to healthcare in the future? It's definitely something you got to look at. Where does the money come from? Yeah, if all of a sudden there's a deficit, well, what do you do about that deficit? Well, we're going to slow down on this program. We're going to cut this. We're going to cut that. Eventually, you can't keep everybody happy forever with promises.
Thanks for your perspective there, Adam. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Chris, we've actually got another text here, and I want to dig into this a little bit too. I mean, so far, positive takes overall, but the closest thing to a scandal that the NDP has kind of come close to so far has been the party's falling out with MLA Mark Wassiliou. We actually had a question from someone who texted in. They just want to know what your take is on the issue, and I'm also curious. These kind of internal squabbles that you hear about. How much of an impact does that have on the party's performance? Internally, but also in terms of perspective from the electorate.
Well, sometimes these things just fade away over time as a big issue. We've had other people from different caucuses ejected, and I'm thinking of Melnick during the Selinger era, as well as Stephen Fletcher by Brian Pallister. And, and after a little while, people forget about it. I do see that the Progressive Conservatives are being tactically smart in the Assembly. They handed over some of their question time over to Wassiliou in yesterday's Assembly when it came back. And so they are making the most out of this, the Progressive Conservatives. So I think, though, that Wad Canoe stepping forward with an apology to Wassiliou's legal associate or partner, or however you want to describe it, and his apology to defense lawyers, admitting that he was wrong in that approach, and they should have just said that we have differences that aren't reconcilable, and we parted ways with this MLA. So Canoe has been smart enough to apologize and then move on from this issue, and it actually makes him look like a stronger leader in the sense that he's willing to admit that he was wrong and then move on, in terms of not wrong in terms of getting the MLA out of the caucus, but wrong in terms of the messaging that was done by his caucus chair. It's like you and I with a parent. When a parent admits that she or he is wrong in what their action, and you as an adolescent, you might respect your parent more for admitting that and then moving on.
Before we let you go here, we got time for one more call. If someone does want to call in, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. And I'm even curious for you there, Chris. How much longer do you think the NDP can sustain a honeymoon like this?
Well, Gary Doer, who has, I think Canoe has taken the page out of Gary Doer's rule book from, who ruled in the 2000s, is that the idea of being relaxed with people from all different walks, the business community as well as the labor community and farmers. So I think this honeymoon can last for quite a while. But, we in the provincial scene, we have to recognize that the provinces are really sort of like vulnerable to forces outside of their control. Gary Filmon was defeated in large part. The hallway medicine issue in the late 1990s, that in part was precipitated by the federal government's cutbacks on social transfers. And so Filmon was having to, be vulnerable to that. Also, we get flooding, and flooding occurred during very major flooding during Greg Selinger's government, and that really put a hole in the budget. So things can happen that are beyond the premier's control. So this honeymoon he should enjoy it right now, but it might not last for reasons beyond his control.
Well, Chris Adams, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, and I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll have you on the show.
Thanks, Corey. Always nice to be on the show. Bye.
That's Christopher Adams, an adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba and author of Politics in Manitoba.
The CBC Music Top 20. CBC Music Live. All right. Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. Experience the next wave of Indigenous music with Reclaim. The global sounds of frequencies. End your day or start your late night with music on CBC Radio 1. Weeknights at 11, 11:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
Well, we're coming up to the end of Radio Noon here today. Thanks to everyone who called in on that segment there. That was great. And we also have someone in studio with us now, Chloe Friesen, who will be sitting in the host chair this afternoon on Up to Speed. Hello.
Hello.
So what you working on?
I am working on a story. I'm very excited about this one.
Okay.
You wouldn't really expect a song titled This Song Sucks to take home a songwriting award.
I'm no marketing expert, but...
Yeah, but Manitoba artist Jade Turner, she proved this wrong, and she took home a very prestigious award from SOCAN for her song called This Song Sucks.
Okay.
So we will hear more about the song. We've played it here on CBC Radio before, but we'll hear how it won the award and what it means to her.
Well, looking forward to that. Thank you very much, Chloe.
No problem.
That's Chloe Friesen. She'll be sitting in the host chair on Up to Speed this afternoon for Faith Vandal from 3 to 6. Well, that brings us to the end of this Thursday edition of Radio Noon. Big thanks to everyone who helped put together today's show. Marshall Hodgins, Dylan Longhurst is our director. Marshall is our technician. Our YouTube live stream producer, Kevin Nipatebo, is here as well, making us all look great. Extra special thanks to Faith Fundal as well for their help producing the show this afternoon. Leif Larson is our senior producer of audio, and Nelly Gonzalez is our show producer. I'm Corey Funk. It's been an absolute pleasure spending the noon hour with you today. Hope that you can spend some time, even despite maybe a little bit of chillier weather, getting out and doing something you love with the people you love. You're listening to CBC Radio 1, and coming up next, Quirks and Quarks. Have a good one.